One of the ways in which my media product challenges forms and conventions of real media products is by the use of my protagonist. This challenges forms and conventions as stereotypically in horror films, females are seen as the weaker gender and are more heavily used as victims as a result, for example, in Friday the 13th, where a female is the first to be murdered. The decision in most media products to have a male protagonist is due to the fact that they are perceived to be physically stronger, whereas I wanted to present my protagonist as physically weaker and helpless so as to build suspense and lead to a more dramatic revelation of the psychotic nature of my protagonist. The fact that my protagonist is a considerable amount younger than in most horror films, where the age range tends to be 25 to 40, also challenges the convention seen in a typical media product of the variety. I made this decision to challenge the media convention in this way as to further the significance of the helpless way my character seems to be. Although I challenged the forms and conventions of the media product in some ways, I also decided to use some of the conventions often depicted in horror media products. One of the conventions I used was a lack of action or violence within the opening. I did this because generally films that use a lot of violence in the beginning leave little to the imagination of the rest of the film, unless the violence is used in a series of flashback shots, which I decided was not appropriate for my particular film genre. Another convention I decided to maintain was the use of a realistic location. I decided to do this not only for the ease of filming, but also because it creates a more sinister situation for the film, such as in The Purge, as it highlights people's fears of the event actually happening in real life, which makes a horror film more thrilling. I also made the decision to film in just one location so as to create the atmosphere of isolation and fear, also often seen in horror film, which is not as easily created if there is a constant change in scenery. This is because it emphasises the oath of possibility to escape and the sense of inevitable doom. In terms of sound, I made the decision to both challenge and use the conventions often seen in a horror film. The way in which I used the convention was by the use of the whine that layers under any other sound in the opening. I used the whine as it is a stereotypical sound frequently associated with ghosts, giving the impression of someone watching over you and giving the opening an overwhelming, creepy essence. The way in which I challenge the genre through sound is by the use of a news report over the top of the whining. The reason this challenges conventions in the film genre is due to the fact that in a horror opening, the most frequent type of sound used is a diegetic sound. I made the decision to challenge this convention because I thought it would increase interest in my film in alliance to the convention of horror to challenge conventions seen in other films. Within the use of the news reports, it is also not made clear how they relate to the character until the end of the film. As at the point the news reports begin, the character could be both the protagonist or the victim. This is something often seen in a horror mystery film, as the films often give clues as to what is going to happen, but the outcome is only revealed at the end of the film. For example, this can be seen in the film Crush. The overall plot of my media product stays within the conventions of a horror film, as it evokes the similar emotions from the viewer of intrigue and fear and creates the emphasis of questions typically asked about horror films and plays on the horror film's ideology to expect the unexpected, which in return creates a situation of anticipation among the audience as the film develops. This is an atmosphere that I decided to create when planning out my film opening in the most prominent film convention and give a clear indication in what could happen in the remainder of the film.